Deep in the Guyanese jungle, a whisper travels on the wind. It speaks of a place called Jonestown, a utopia carved out of the wilderness, a place of peace and racial harmony, where people from all walks of life could live together in equality. This was the promise of Jim Jones, a charismatic leader who offered salvation and a new beginning. But the jungle holds secrets, dark secrets. The whispers turn to screams, echoing through the trees, a chorus of anguish and despair. The utopia had become a prison, and the path to salvation led to a vat of poisoned Kool-Aid. This is the story of Jonestown. James Warren Jones, or Jim Jones as he was known, was a magnetic figure. His presence was commanding, and his words had a way of resonating deeply with those who heard him. He began his ministry in Indianapolis in the 1950s, preaching a message of social justice and racial equality. His sermons were not just about faith but about action, urging his followers to make tangible changes in their communities. People were drawn to his charisma and his vision of a better world. They saw in him a leader who could guide them towards a more just and compassionate society. He called his growing congregation the People's Temple. This was not just a church but a movement, a collective striving for a utopian ideal. They were everyday people searching for purpose and belonging in a world often cold and indifferent. The People's Temple offered them a sense of family, a place where they felt valued and understood. Little did they know they were placing their trust in the hands of a man slowly being consumed by his own demons. Behind the facade of a benevolent leader, Jim Jones was grappling with paranoia and a growing sense of megalomania. Jim Jones, you see my friends, we are building a new world, a place where everyone is equal, where no one is judged by the color of their skin or their social status, where there is no hate, no division. In this new world we are all brothers and sisters, united by our shared humanity and our commitment to justice. Together, we can make this dream a reality. But as the dream grew, so did the shadows lurking behind it, casting a dark cloud over the bright vision that had once inspired so many. Jim Jones was a master manipulator, a puppeteer of human emotions. His charisma and persuasive skills were unparalleled, allowing him to draw people in with ease. He had an uncanny ability to read his audience, to understand their deepest fears and desires, and to exploit them for his own gain. He wove a web of belief so strong that his followers would do anything for him. This web was not just a set of ideas, but a complex system of emotional and psychological manipulation. He made his followers feel special, chosen, and part of a grand mission that only he could lead. He preached about the evils of the outside world, the Babylon that sought to destroy their community. He painted a picture of a world filled with danger and corruption, a world that was hostile to their way of life. This narrative made his followers more dependent on him, as he positioned himself as their only protector. He instilled in them a fear of the outside, a fear only he could protect them from. This fear was a powerful tool, keeping his followers isolated and under his control. They believed that without him, they would be lost, vulnerable to the threats he described. He demanded absolute loyalty and obedience, isolating them from their families and friends. By cutting off their external support systems, he made them more reliant on the community he controlled. This isolation was both physical and emotional, creating a sense of us versus them. Those who questioned his authority were publicly humiliated or worse. This public shaming served as a warning to others, reinforcing the idea that dissent was dangerous. It created an atmosphere of fear and compliance, where questioning the leader was unthinkable. He convinced them to surrender their money, their possessions, and ultimately, their very lives to him. This surrender was framed as a noble sacrifice, a way to show their commitment to the cause. In reality, it was a way to strip them of their independence and make them more controllable. Psychologist, Jones created a closed system of belief where he was the ultimate authority. In this system, his word was law, and any outside information was dismissed as lies or propaganda. This closed system made it nearly impossible for followers to question or escape his influence. His followers were trapped in a bubble of his making, unable to see the reality outside the narrative he controlled. This bubble was reinforced by constant repetition of his teachings and the suppression of any dissenting voices. In this way, he maintained an iron grip on their minds and lives. As Jones's grip on his followers tightened, the lines between faith and fanaticism blurred. His sermons, once filled with messages of hope and unity, began to take on a darker tone. The promises of salvation were now intertwined with threats of damnation for those who dared to question his authority. The community in Jonestown was built on a foundation of fear and dependency. Every aspect of life was controlled, from the food they ate to the thoughts they were allowed to think. The isolation from the outside world only deepened their reliance on Jones. Dissent was crushed, and questioning the Father, as Jones demanded to be called, was unthinkable. Punishments for disobedience were severe, ranging from public humiliation to physical abuse. The fear of retribution kept everyone in line. People believed in him, in the power he seemed to possess. They saw him as a savior, a man who could lead them to a utopian future. His charisma was undeniable, and his ability to manipulate emotions was unparalleled. They believed in the illusion of safety and security he had created, even as the walls of their jungle paradise began to close in. The promises of a better life kept them hopeful, even as the reality of their situation grew more dire. Reporter, the world watched in horror as the events in Jonestown unfolded. The mass suicide orchestrated by Jones shocked the global community. It was a chilling example of how far blind faith could lead. It was a tragic reminder of the dangers of blind faith and the power of charismatic leaders to manipulate and control. The Jonestown Massacre remains a stark warning of the potential for devastation when individuals surrender their will to a single, unchecked authority. Section 5. Paradise Lost. The promised utopia of Jonestown was anything but. Located in the remote jungles of Guyana, it was a place of hardship and paranoia. Food was scarce, labor was grueling, and Jones's behavior became increasingly erratic and tyrannical. He enforced his control through intimidation and violence, public beatings, and staged suicide drills.
His followers, trapped in a web of fear and isolation, had nowhere to turn. The jungle that was meant to be their sanctuary had become their prison.
Section 6. The Hour of the Kool-Aid. The horrific climax of the Jonestown tragedy unfolded on November 18, 1978. Under Jones's orders, more than 900 people, including over 300 children, drank Flavor Aid laced with cyanide. It was a scene of unimaginable horror, a mass suicide orchestrated by a madman who had convinced his followers that death was the only escape from the evils of the outside world. The world watched in shock and disbelief as the news broke of the Jonestown Massacre. Section 7. Legacy of a Tragedy. The Jonestown Massacre stands as a chilling reminder of the dangers of cult mentality and the devastating consequences of blind obedience. It forces us to confront the dark side of human nature, the vulnerability to manipulation, and the seductive power of a charismatic leader.
In the aftermath, questions lingered. How could so many people be led to their deaths? How could a man like Jim Jones command such absolute power over others?
The scars of Jonestown run deep, a stark warning about the fragility of the human psyche and the importance of critical thinking. Section 8. The Mind of a Cult Leader.
Jim Jones was a charismatic narcissist, a master manipulator who preyed on the vulnerabilities of his followers. He offered them a sense of belonging, a purpose in life, and a charismatic leader to guide them. He used sleep deprivation, emotional manipulation, and physical abuse to break down their sense of self and replace it with absolute loyalty to him. He understood the power of fear and isolation, using them to maintain control over his flock. Jones was a master of propaganda, convincing his followers that he alone held the key to their salvation.
Section 9. Escape from Jonestown.
Not everyone in Jonestown succumbed to the madness. There were those who saw through the facade, who dared to question Jones's authority and the reality of the utopia he had created. Some managed to escape the compound, braving the dangers of the jungle to bring the truth to the outside world. Their stories offer a glimmer of hope amidst the tragedy, a testament to the enduring human spirit and the courage to resist even in the face of overwhelming pressure.
Section 10. The Price of Blind Faith.
The Jonestown Massacre is a stark reminder of the dangers of blind faith and uncritical obedience. It highlights the importance of questioning authority, of thinking for oneself, and of maintaining healthy skepticism. It underscores the need for strong social support systems and the dangers of isolation and dependency. The tragedy serves as a cautionary tale, urging us to be discerning in our beliefs, to value critical thinking, and to never surrender our autonomy to any individual or ideology.
Section 11. Remembering Jonestown. The Jonestown Massacre remains a haunting reminder of the dark side of human nature and the dangers of unchecked power. It is a story that continues to fascinate and horrify, a cautionary tale that transcends time. As we remember the victims, we must also learn from their tragedy. We must strive to create a world where critical thinking is valued, where diversity of opinion is respected, and where individuals are empowered to resist the allure of charismatic leaders who promise salvation at the expense of freedom and reason. Only then can we hope to prevent the horrors of Jonestown from ever being repeated.